we are 2 weeks in to the new year, and if you are anything like me, you've already pretty much have your year mapped out. At least, maybe not completely totally mapped out, but you have a general idea of the things you want to do this year, the goals you want to accomplish, and how you plan on getting there. One of the things that I think many of us do at the beginning of a new year is that we tend to self-reflect. We do a self-assessment. We reevaluate certain areas of our lives where we'd like to improve. A lot of us start focusing on our physical, emotional, spiritual, mental health. And I think that that's a good thing, because there's no better time to really focus on those things than the beginning of the new year. And I think that while for many of us women, we tend to do a great job at these things, maybe not so good at being consistent and following through, but I know that we definitely do a good job when it comes to figuring out the things that we want, the things that we need, and then creating some sort of plan on how to get there. And the reason that I say, women have a better idea about this, it's just from my own experience. It's just from the fact that I have my vision board workshops and the request and or the demand has always been from women. However, I think that there is a shift happening, within our society where men are now more actively becoming more involved and more engaged in their own self-awareness, in their own mental wellness, their own spiritual wellness. And so there's a need, I think, now for platforms, for events, for workshops, for all of these different kinds of things that cater to the male experience. And I say that because I've had a number of men actually reach out to me because they're seeking some of, the services that I provide, either through my workshops, through my seminars, even through some of the content, that I share on this podcast that has traditionally been very female-centered. They are finding value in that. And so because my male demographic and my listenership is increasing, I am, one, paying attention to what my listeners want, right? To my demographic, to my audience. And I am starting to expand my platform so that it is inclusive of what men need and what they're telling me that they want. And in fact, expand is actually one of my words for 2019. I want to expand in every area of my life. I want to expand in business, in my career, in my relationships, in my faith, in my closeness to God. And so I am calling into my life this year expansion. And with that being said, I figured that there would be no better way than to kind of kick off this year than by inviting a man to be a guest on the show. And not just any man, but this is an expert who has really made a career and is building a brand and platform for himself on mental health and self-care as it relates to men, but not only, men, specifically young men, the youth. He's out there in the streets, with his boots, his feet on the ground, really making an impact where it matters most. And that's with our young men. If we pay attention to what's happening around us, if we look at the news, we see what's happening. And the best way to create healthy, self-aware, productive men is to tap into the younger men, right? To the teenagers, to the young boys, to this population that for whatever reason has historically been ignored. So for that reason, I invited Dr. Randy Sconiers to be a guest. And I will tell you that this has to be by far one of my favorite interviews, only because of his transparency, his knowledge. He is just a super smart man. He really knows his stuff, and he's really out there doing work that means something to him. He's passionate about this work. So it's not just about him making a name for himself and being able to earn a living and building his brand and all of that stuff. He really loves this work that he does. And he has been able to do something not very unique, but something that I think is unique in the fact that he has been able to tie two things that he loves and is very passionate about and bring them together for the greater good. And that is his love for hip hop, and then his love, for mental health, mental wellness, and all of that good stuff. And so it really is an honor and a privilege to have had him, this week as a guest. The interview is incredible. He shares so much knowledge, just a breath of fresh air. I really enjoy talking to individuals who can contribute a different perspective to a lot of the things that many of us experience. And that's regardless if you're a man, a woman, whether you're young or old. The conversation was really centered on how we can start shifting the stereotype of mental health and what it means to seek out help when we need it. How do we start to shift that stereotype where it's not being perceived as something that only crazy people do? And so I appreciated the conversation that he and I had. He talked a lot about what it means to redefine what it means to be a man, and how the traditional definition of what being a man has almost been a hindrance for men and their own evolution. So without any further ado, I hope you enjoy this week's episode of the Empowerment Hour podcast. And when I come back, I will be joined by Dr. Randy Sconiers. You are tuned in to the Empowerment Hour podcast, your digital global classroom where individuals across all ages, backgrounds, and career levels tune in for guidance and motivation to live life on their own terms. It's where inspiring thought leaders, modern-day influencers, and social game changers come to discuss their own personal journeys and have real conversations about the journey to success. I am your host, Nancy Ruffin, and every week I bring you raw and unfiltered conversations about the obstacles we all encounter, the times we felt like giving up, and the things that keep us forging forward. It's where passion and purpose intersect. So if you're ready to start living on purpose, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Empowerment Hour podcast. I'm excited because tonight I am being joined by a special guest. And, it isn't often where I open up, the floor to having a male counterpart, because as you know, I focus a lot on doing women's work, but there are times where I feel that it's necessary to invite a man on, just because we need balance and it's important to get their perspective on certain issues. And so I've been following this gentleman for quite some time on social media. He's out there hitting the pavement, boots on the ground, really doing this work, not just for men in our community, but dealing with youth, at-risk youth. And he's done something that's really, really interesting. He has managed to tie in the hip hop culture with mental health awareness. And he's just out there doing the damn thing. And so I want you guys to help me in welcoming Dr. Randy Sconiers to the show tonight. Hey, Randy.
What's going on, Nancy? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Really do.
I'm so thankful that you agreed, to be on. I know that it can be a little overwhelming to participate in what's usually a predominantly female, show. But
Definitely.
as I mentioned, it's important to kind of have the yin and the yang, right? The two
Of
different
course.
perspectives.
Sure.
And from a male perspective, you're doing a lot of similar work to what I do. And so I guess I really just want to allow my listeners to get to know a little bit more about who you are, the work that you do, and how
Hmm.
you got involved or what inspired you to kind of get into the mental health field. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it started, my journey in terms of mental health started a long time ago. We're talking about over 20 years now. Just if when I tell the story, it's crazy. I really was a cook, trying to find my way fresh out of high school, and I didn't even have a career path really. I know you talk a lot about purpose, and I love the work that you do when you talk to your audience about finding that thing that you're inspired to do, and it didn't come to me right away like a lot of people.
Mm,
It took some time to sort of explore and kind of find my path, and that path took me different places. I was fresh out of high school, graduated, didn't go to college right away, and I started cooking. And I was in the music business, believe it or not, Nancy. I was trying to be a hip
wow.
hop artist, yeah, and I was had a group out here in Jersey, and
Nice.
we were doing some things in Jersey, but it's like what you talk about, alignment and finding your path. And I remember seeing a story about some young kids out here in New Jersey who were being neglected, and that story came on the news one day, and I saw it, and it changed my life forever. I couldn't imagine how people could mistreat our little ones,
Right.
and I found that there was so much more for me to do, so much more work for me to do, and I just got on a mission. From that day on, the next day I believe I signed up um, to start taking courses at a community college, and then from there I just kept going. I never stopped.
Wow.
I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and I kept going and got my master's degree in social work, and I continue and along that path and got my doctorate in social work as well. And that's
I
where I'm
love
at
that.
today.
I
Yeah,
absolutely love that. And I'm happy that you're sharing this story because I think what happens many times is that we fall into this trap where we think we have to know it all by a certain point in our life or by a certain age, or
exactly.
by the time we graduate high school, that we should know what we're going to major in college. And I think that that puts a lot of pressure on
Oh yeah,
people, right?
definitely, definitely. I believe like in high school, it was funny. I was watching so many of my, some of my fellow students, signing up to go away to school, and you feel this kind of pressure, like I should be doing the same thing, but I always felt like if it wasn't for me, I wasn't going to push it, and if that meant that I was going to get a job fresh out of high school, I was okay with that. And I think that's something for people to understand when you talk about purpose as well. Is you don't have to force purpose. Purpose
Right.
is something that once you kind of find out what it is, it's an eye opener for you, and it's a great feeling once you hit that point.
And just to kind of add on to what you're saying about purpose, sometimes we don't know what that is. Sometimes it is like an aha moment, like Oprah says. It's just like from 1 minute to the next, like you were doing one thing, you saw this, this story on the news. And from that moment, it was like something sparked inside of you and you
Yep.
knew that you had to do something.
That's right. Yeah, and it's amazing how the opportunities to impact the lives of other people come to us. So I've always considered myself to be a helper in some regard, even as
Hmm.
a young person, but never really thought of myself going down that road in terms of professionally being someone that would be where I'm at today. And that story was about young boys, and that was the thing that really, stuck to me. And I started doing more work focusing on and advocating for our young men in terms of their mental and emotional health. And that's sort of where I kind of took on that mantle of sort of like, I'm going to be the person that lets our young men know that it's okay to express how you feel. Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about like the early times in your career. I was reading that you used to work, or you started um, at kind of working in like a correctional facility, or some type of program for young boys.
Yes, yeah, that was an interesting time in my professional journey. I fresh out of college, it was my first sort of big gig, right? You look for that
Mm-hmm.
first big job, and it was in Jamesburg Correctional Facility for boys out here in New Jersey, which I'm happy to
Nice.
say that they actually focused on closing, which is great. But you get this new opportunity, and you're a therapist in a correctional facility. You're going to go in there and you're going to make all types of changes, and you quickly realize that you know not everybody has that same sort of interest. Not everybody has
Right.
that same sort of goal in terms of helping these young men. And I went there, and I worked there for about a year. But in mental health, Nancy, we have something called transference, and this is when you're in a situation in which those feelings that the people you're helping, you sort of have this connection with them that's so strong, but it doesn't necessarily mean in a positive way. So here
Right.
I'm as a Black male clinician trying to help a population of young boys that I would say probably 90% of the population was Black and brown kids. And I just felt like, I felt myself like I was in prison. That's how
Mm.
strong it is, even for people that work there of color. It's
Wow.
it's extremely difficult for some, for me
Right.
doing that work. And I made it my mission to leave that and get out in the street and talk to young men about doing all you can to avoid,
To avoid
getting locked.
getting
Of
there.
course, yeah, it was traumatic.
And
It
that's
was a
very,
traumatic experience.
that's powerful, because I mean, of course, just because you're in prison or you go to jail, I mean, doesn't mean that that's going to be the end all be all, but we
Correct.
know that once you're in the system, it becomes that much more difficult for you to
Definitely.
stay out of the system,
Definitely.
and be successful. So the fact that you had almost like the foresight to understand that you would be a greater asset outside of that environment, outside in the streets, reaching these children, before they find themselves in a situation that lands them behind bars, is powerful. Can you talk a little, can you talk to, I guess, a little bit about, that work that you do, in the schools, because I know that you do a lot of work with schools. You give these, speeches, and you have these presentations, and I know you recently got hired, to teach at a university, so talk a little bit about what that work looks like when you're really there, face to face with these young people.
Well, I have three sort of, ways that I look at it. My goal is to engage, empower, and educate. And even as a mental health clinician, we are really teachers. That's how I see myself, as a
Mm-hmm.
teacher. Because some people in a lot of communities, as you know, Nancy, we just don't talk about mental health. It's
No.
something that is taboo. And what I try to do, especially for our young men, is I try to make it as cool as possible. I try to make it sort of the norm that um, you can sort of let these weights go. You no longer have to carry this stuff around with you, and regardless of what society says, regardless of how you grew up, I'm going to give you an emotionally safe place to be able to do that, and that's what my talks are all about. So, I've been able to contract with schools and get in there. And sometimes it's one-time situations where I go out and talk to the whole school. Sometimes it's a group of young men that they may present to me. And the other times I'm there for 6 to 8 weeks. I have different programs that are set up in terms of the work that I do,
Right.
in order to to really help that the population of kids, mostly middle school and high school kids, are what I focus on.
And I think that that's important because when we talk, you touched upon something, because you're saying that you provide the space and the opportunity for them to really almost kind of be vulnerable. And
Sure.
when we talk, like, I think for women, being vulnerable is just in our nature. We're very
Yeah.
emotional beings, and so we're naturally that way.
Yeah.
But for men and for young boys, it's almost like from the minute that they're born, we teach them to repress their emotions, and
That's right.
that if they show emotion, that it's a sign of weakness. And
Yeah.
so how do you kind of re-educate them on that? Because it's something that it's ingrained not just by their families, but by society, by the images that we see on TV, in movies, the things that we're hearing in the music. Like, how do we kind of start to break down those walls so that they can connect with their emotion and be okay with saying, I'm afraid, or I'm scared, or just embracing that softer side of who they are.
Yeah, and I think the way that we do it starts with having other men be strong enough to be able to challenge our young men, to say to them, it's more than just okay, it's necessary for you to let these things go. And we have to sort of break the cycle, and we start with a conversation about what does it mean to be a male, and where do you get these sort of narratives from? And I give the young people an opportunity to talk about how they grew up, and then we go right into sort of challenging stereotypes, and redefining what it means to be a man. Because I really got started. I'm going to go back a little bit. There was a class that I took on at Kane University, where I'm going to be teaching at, actually going back to teach. I was a student there, and it's kind of cool to go back to where it started. But it was a class on women's issues. It was a sociology class, and that class really changed my life, because it really made me realize that when we hear the stories of young men being raised by single mothers, it was always looked at as sort of like a crutch or a negative. And I always sort of looked at it in a different sort of light. Our young men were being raised by women who were strong, resilient in most cases. Emotionally, they expressed how they felt. So
Right.
why can't we help our young men to be able to draw from that, and to be able to say, there's so many strengths that we can take from that.
Right.
And even though we didn't have a father figure around, let's talk about how we can take the things that we learn from those strong women in our lives, and kind of utilize that to help us become stronger men. And then one of the ways that we can do that is being, emotionally strong, and being able to express how we felt, and being able to share our feelings. It didn't make us weak at all. In fact, it made us even stronger. And talking to young men, for them, it's interesting. They talk about how the ladies would perceive them, how young ladies may perceive them if they were being able to express how they felt.
Right.
And I would say, no, women want a man who can, they want men who can express how they feel, and still be strong at the same time. So it's, once again, just changing that narrative, or helping them do it. We don't do it for them. We give them the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that you said something really important. You said redefining what it means to be a man. So it's changing the idea that you can only be a man or be a real man if you maintain this very machismo type of attitude, and just always strong, and don't allow yourself to tap in, to your emotions. So I think that that's a really powerful statement. And I think also that not just, men like you that are doing this work, but I think for mothers, who are raising young boys, even if they are, like you were saying, even if they are raising them on their own, they have to be mindful of what they themselves are teaching these young boys. And I say that because I had a girlfriend some years ago who was a single mom. And because she was single, she felt, and the dad wasn't in the picture at all. So there wasn't like a constant male figure, but she felt like she had to raise a man. And for her, raising a man was like her son was not supposed to cry, and he always had to, be strong. And again, kind of just repeating, the cycles that we have historically seen. Whereas for me, I'm like, you're doing this kid a disservice because you're not allowing him, one, to be a kid. You're putting too much pressure on him to be a man, and he's just a boy. This is what he's going to internalize. And then when he grows up, he's going to think that that's what it means to be a man.
Exactly. And it's right on point because, and it goes back to just understanding those societal pressures that come in. It's just about teaching, even, a single mom and letting her know, no, what allowing your son to cry or allowing your son to express how he feels, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, that may be something that may save his life down the line, that ability to not have to carry that weight that's placed upon him. Does he have that ability to express his feelings and be okay and comfortable with that? So you're absolutely right. And it's all about letting her know that, letting those single moms know that you are doing great work by just, raising your son, but also allowing him to express how he feels too. There's nothing wrong with that.
I spend a lot of time on social media. I'm kind of addicted. This is one of my goals this year is to kind of come back on my social media time. But I was like scrolling the other day through Instagram, and I forgot who it was. Someone posted a video, and I know you commented on this video. And it was like a group of teenagers kind of hanging outside, and then like, I don't know what happened. There was some kind of altercation, but the young man ended up slapping like the young girl.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was a video. I believe it was my son that posted that. Somebody that I follow. I know a lot of people follow, and he's doing a lot of good work.
Yeah, he is. He brings awareness to a lot of the issues that are plaguing our communities. But I wanted to kind of talk about that because we see these things happen in our community, and then we see there was a group of people just standing there kind of allowing it or coercing it. They're recording it. Then I think they were kind of pressuring who I think it was the boyfriend to step up and defend her. And when we see these images that these young kids at such a young age are kind of going through this rage that they embody and the violence, and it's like, where is this coming from, and where are they learning this from?
Yeah, and that was about my comment. I think somebody had posted a comment about the historical context of the young man being so okay with striking the young lady and sort of just not really having any ability to differentiate between hitting a boy or a girl. And it was just about, the perpetuation of violence in our society, but also from a historical context that, a lot of our young men and young ladies as well were never really, and just for generations, we weren't able to share our feelings. We were always taught how to feel. And as a consequence to that, we don't, our young people are still learning, the proper ways to express themselves and be able to communicate their feelings and be able to say that when they're upset and not be prone to violence as the first line of defense instead of communicating. So I just wanted to share that. And that's the generation, what you saw in that video. Those are my clients. That's what that's the population I work with every single day for the last 15 to 20 years, and I love them. I love it. I love our youth. I believe in our youth. I'll never give up on them.
Right. And that's the thing. I think that, a lot of what they're experiencing is because they're lacking that person that really cares about them and is invested in them and believes that they can do better and
Correct.
expect better. Because, I'm one who firmly believes in setting expectations. You have to have expectations for people, because when you have expectations for someone, then they are more likely to perform in the manner that you expect of them, right? Whether that's good or whether that's bad. So if you treat a young kid or a young person as if they don't matter, they have no value, they're insignificant, they're stupid, have nothing to contribute, then they're going to live up to your expectations of them, right?
Definitely. I mean, that's something we learned early on in terms of the self-fulfilling prophecy. I really do believe it. I believe that every time I greet a young person, I see our young men as young kings, and I see our young ladies as young queens. And I want them to see themselves in that light. And if they see each other in that light, you're more likely to respond to that person and behave towards them in a totally different way. So yeah, you raise the bar, not only raise it, it's within them.
Right.
They're super intelligent, they're super smart, super capable, and I want them to know that. So that's sort of like my message whenever I go out to schools, is that it's in you. It's who you are, and we just have to activate it. And once you activate it, you see them soar, and it's amazing to see what our young people could do. So, that's what mental hop is all about too.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, because I actually wanted to shift the conversation, into the work that you do with Mental Hop. I know that you have your own podcast where you have kind of married the two worlds of hip hop and mental health. And now, because you said you were a hip hop artist, now I can see why that is a natural, thing for you. Well, I guess where did you see that you could use hip hop, as a tool to educate on mental health and mental awareness? And then, you went out and you did that. Like, talk to me a little bit about what that process was like for you.
Yeah, I think it was just who I am, right? We know hip hop is really like a way of being, right? It's sort of like we grew up listening to hip hop music, and it influences us in different ways, but it's a culture, right? It's how we talk, how we walk, and how we act and how we behave. So even in my professional life, that's always been a part of how I engage young people. Like one of the first questions is, what kind of music do you listen to, or who do you like out there? And as they started, sharing their artists that they're into, it gave me an opportunity to talk about, the artists I grew up with listening to, as far as Jay and Nas and Big and Pac, and even before them. And it's an opportunity to spark a discussion. So I was always utilizing hip hop. So then I got a little bit more. I had one day in my office, and I was like, I really want to formalize this. And people have been doing great work already in terms of incorporating hip hop into therapy and things like that. But I wanted to use hip hop in a way to educate our young people in terms of mental health prior to getting to therapy. So I wanted to take a little bit more of a proactive approach and use the culture of hip hop to sort of as a tool to educate and give young people the information that they needed. Sort of like a health class that you would take in high school, but it's a mental health class, and we do it through hip hop culture, and it makes it engaging, and makes it exciting to talk about, and it's a real cool, easy way to reduce the stigma around mental health.
Yeah, because I think that we're seeing like this huge awareness now being brought to light, around mental health. Everyone is talking about mental health. We see the celebrities talking about it. Everyone, there are more people being more vocal about seeking therapy and being in therapy and what it's done, to help them. And so I think that the stigma that used to be on mental health as it being something for quote unquote crazy people, right? Like only if you were crazy was when you needed to kind of see a therapist or to speak to someone. But in reality, I mean, really what that is just providing an avenue or a different way to talk about the things that we're feeling inside.
Correct.
And that's really what
Correct.
mental wellness is. And I think that if we just change the wording, we say mental illness instead of saying mental wellness, right?
Yep.
And that's what the focus should be on, just making sure that we're mentally, emotionally, spiritually well. And the same way that we would go and see a doctor, if we're physically ill or if we have an injury or a broken leg that needs to, to be mended so that it can heal, so does, the mind and the spirit, we have to take equal care of that the same way we would our bodies.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's exactly what my message is. If you had a broken leg, you would be 100% okay with walking into a hospital in most cases,
Right.
unless you have some phobia around going to hospitals. But in most cases, you would be okay, right, with going to see your doctor. But if you felt sad or depressed, there's this sort of stigma around being okay to come see me as a mental health clinician, or going to see somebody else who's a psychologist or, a psychiatrist for that matter. So, yeah, we have to just normalize it. Our mental health is just as important as our physical health. And as we look at it just the same, you can go into any hospital and say to them that I'm not feeling well emotionally, and they will treat you with the services that you need in terms of your mental and emotional health. And I just don't think a lot of our young people know that, or a lot of people in general, they don't know where to go and not educate them in a very practical way. You can walk into your hospital, and when you sign up, see that first person you greet, whether it's a nurse, doctor, you can let them know, I'm feeling, I feel sad, or I feel depressed, or I'm worried or anxious. And you can communicate that to them, and they can help point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't have to be difficult.
It's ironic because I had a cousin who suffered from mental illness. He was, schizophrenic, he was bipolar, and he was he was violent, so he would hurt people, and not himself, but he would hurt people.
Sure.
But he used to hallucinate. He just say the weirdest things. And I always felt that he never got the proper help or the proper treatment, because all they would do whenever he would be violent and he would harm someone, if they would, send them to the psych ward at some, mental health institution or some hospital, and all they would do was really drug him and not really work with healing him as a whole. And ultimately he ended up committing suicide at 23. I think he was 23 years old.
Wow. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many undiagnosed people who are walking around undiagnosed just because they just never got the help. They never seek treatment, or as we talked about earlier, it was just taboo to even talk about, mental health. In some families and some cultures, you just don't mention it. So with that being said, there's generations of mental health issues that people have been carrying from generation to generation. And I just think this generation, our young people, and I think hip hop was really at the forefront of helping to decrease the stigma. This generation is ready. They're ready to shake loose a lot of those, those things that have been carried from generation to generation. And we have a great opportunity to really empower them even more to be able to do that. So, that's what the work that I'm doing is all about. Let's shake this stuff off and get the help that we need.
And to break these generational cycles, man, because, it's repetitive, and the things that we see with some of the youth are just because their parents didn't know any better.
Correct. Yeah. And that's it. Yeah. And I don't blame, I don't blame the parents. I don't blame the kids, because it's all a cycle, right? That you learned, and it continued and continued. And like I said, if we look at the historical context of it, we can go that far back to say that we never were even allowed to express how we felt. In fact, we were told how to feel by somebody else. So in that regard, we kept our feelings inside, because a lot of times we were, punished for expressing how we felt. So, if we look at it fast forward now, a lot of young people are simply carrying on the things that they learn, and we're letting them know that no, it's a new day and age, it's a new time, this is your opportunity. And I think a lot of young people are ready, and that's why I'm so excited and I'm so motivated and eager to go into these schools, to go into these communities and talk to young people about mental health in a way that a lot of them never even talked about it before. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And so I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, because I know that, I know you're married. I know that you have, is it 3 girls that you have? I know you have
All
daughters,
girls. Yeah,
right?
all girls. Yep. I have a 13-year-old, a 10, almost 11, to be 11 on Friday, and I have a 4-year-old. So all girls, definitely.
What is that like being, I mean, because I know in my house, we drive my husband crazy. So, and it's
Yeah.
just 3 of us. I can't imagine you being the only male, your wife and your 3 girls, teenager, preteen.
Wow.
How do you, because I always ask this to the women, so how do you juggle, right, being a dad, and also with your career and all of this work that you're doing within the community? How do you juggle that? How do you balance that? How do you make sure that the home is still solid, even though you're giving so much of yourself, to others?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm really big, just like you. I'm really big on self-care. I did my whole dissertation for my doctorate on self-care
Yes, talk
for
about it. Talk
for
about it,
for
Randy,
for
because
clinicians.
these men, the few that listen to my podcast, they need to hear what you have to say. They have to understand that self-care is also necessary for men.
Of course, of course. I mean, I'm at a situation where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do my doctorate on, and it just made sense to do it on working with young people and working on with our youth. And then I realized I'm talking to so many people who are burnt out and emotionally
Mm-hmm.
fatigued and compassionately fatigued, and I got to do something on this. So just doing the research and finding out that self-care was a way to mitigate burnout, is if we practice good self-care, that we can actually ward off feeling burned out. And so it's all about balance. I'm in a career where most of the people doing the work that I do, they tap out, they get
Right.
burned out. And I'm okay with the things I tell people on my Instagram. Say no. I'm okay with
Mm.
telling people if I can't do
Yes.
it, I can't do
Yes.
it. And I'm okay with that. I want to make sure that even in my practice, I have clinicians that work for my practice, and I tell them we don't take more than we can handle. So
Mm.
if we can't take more cases, I'm okay
Okay.
with that.
Right.
It's sort of like self-care has to be the priority, and that's what it is for me. So my family's first. I'm at every practice, every basketball game. And that's the priority for me. And I also have times where I'm hanging out with my boys and spending time
Yeah.
with my wife as well. And I find a balance. And if I don't do that, then I'm not practicing what I'm preaching to
Right.
my clients and to the other, my colleagues. So it's important just to have that balance and make sure that you have self-care as the mainstay that keeps you grounded.
Oh, I love that you shared that, and I'm just it excites me, because I think that we don't talk enough about self-care as it relates to men. We see it with women all the time. We're always practicing self-care. We want self-care every day if we could have self-care every day,
Yeah,
but
but
men don't, because
they need it. They
yeah,
need
they
it too.
do. They absolutely do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of following your lead. I would love to get our young men together and talk about self-care, because I know they need it. I know they want to talk about it. I know they're feeling overwhelmed at times, and I think that giving them the tools and letting them know that it's okay to take a break. Not that it's okay, it's
It's
necessary. You
necessary,
have to,
right?
or you're just gonna see yourself tap out mentally, physically, and emotionally, and that's never good. That's never
Right.
going to benefit you at the job or even you in your relationships. So, that's the goal, is to, once again, to redefine what it means to, redefine what the behaviors that men can participate in and it be more than okay. And that's, what I'm happy to do as well.
Oh, Randy, thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything that you shared, for your insight, your expertise. It has been such an honor to have you as a guest, to chat with you. I've kept you longer than I promised. So
No, it's fine.
thank you for sticking with me and just being so gracious in everything that you've shared. I want to give my listeners an opportunity, to connect with you and your services should they
Sure.
need them. So please let them know how they can find you and where they can connect with you.
Okay, great. Well, I have a private practice. It's in Central New Jersey. And they can find me at newstepscounseling.com. And then, of course, find me on Instagram. I'm at DOC ._S. And they can also follow me at Mental Hop. And they can reach out to me on any one of those platforms. And I'm a clinician, so I take clients. I'm open to taking cases, but I also do consultation, not just for kids, but also adults as well. And speaking engagements. And can I plug the podcast
You
as
could
well,
plug
Nancy?
everything.
Okay.
Yes, plug your podcast. If you want to hire him to come do a workshop at your school, at your organization, plug it all. That's what we're here for. Let them know everything that you do and how they can find you.
So you can find me, like I said, New Steps Counseling. Mental Hop is the podcast, and that's on Apple, that's on Spotify, and that's MENTALHOP. And just listen to, some of the episodes. The last one was all about the new year and being on go. And we got the green light to follow our dreams, and we're staying on go. And call me to do, speaking engagements at schools and
if you want him to be a guest on your podcast, reach out to him. He'll come and speak on your podcast too. Right?
Of course,
do it
I'm
all.
everywhere. If you call me, I'm going to be there. Even, we 9:00 at night, we're talking, having a great conversation. And it's all about empowering the people and talking about mental health in a brand new way. And I'm excited to be able to do that. So, and can I plug the book?
Yes, plug the book. Yes.
Put the book out
let me plug the book because you gifted me a copy of this book. And I will tell you that this book is like the perfect morning companion. It's called Good Mornings.
Correct. Yeah.
And it has something in there for every single day. You open up the book, you read it, and it really sets you up to have a positive day. It was super helpful for me when he sent it to me. I mean, I would recommend you read like a page a day, but I like to read, so I kind of read the whole book like in one day, but I still have it. And the thing is, I have the book at work. So from time to time, I still whip it out of my desk, and I'll type into a page and I will read it. So, I mean, now you can tell them where they can buy it. But yes, I am plugging his book. It was amazing.
I appreciate that. It's called Good Mornings, Wake Up Calls for Life. And, you can catch it on, get it on Amazon. It's at you can get it online, Apple Books, and it's everywhere. But it's an easy read, a daily morning read, inspirational, encouraging, and you can write in it. And I hear a lot of people that go back to it after they read it, and once in a while get a quick wake up call if they need it, and that's what it's all about. So I got another one coming out soon, working on it. It's coming to y'all, but I appreciate you guys picking up this one as well. So thanks again, Nancy, for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. Continue doing your thing. I'm gonna put you on the spot because I want us to collaborate sometime this year on something. I don't know what yet, but I respect what you're doing. I admire it, and I think that we can come together, pull our resources, and do something really amazing for our community. So
definitely. Yeah, I think we're going to do something. I know you're all about alignment and intentional work. And I know it's going to happen in 2019 and applaud to you too. I want to applaud you. You have been an inspiration as well. I know you sit here and you interview people and you talk to people and it's so dope that you give people the opportunity to share, but you are inspiration as well to so many people. I listen to your podcast. I listen to the interviews. I see the work that you're doing for our women out there, and it's amazing. And I just want to applaud you for the work that you're doing, and more blessings to you and your family for 2019 for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I wish the same for you. And I'm not going to keep you any longer because it's now we're going like on an hour.
Correct.
And I told you half an hour, but it was the conversation was so good. It flowed. So just thank you, and we will touch base soon. I appreciate you, and I'll see you around the internet.
Sounds good, Nancy. Have a good one.
Okay.
Take care.
Have a good night, Randy.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Empowerment Hour podcast. For topic suggestions, questions, or to become a sponsor of the show, you can send an email to info@nancyarroyoruffin.com.